The Global Consortium, uniting the world through education. The Global Consortium.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. That was a little weak, huh? Good afternoon. There's one of me and there's 170 of you. Good afternoon? Good afternoon. All right, that's a little bit better. All right, I'm absolutely thrilled to be making a presentation here today and give you a little background, and then we'll cut to the chase here. One of my former students, Joanna here, had taken me for global studies and wrote me a very nice email after the class was over and said, I really like the classes that you had and the people that you hooked up with, but you never did anything on the Mexican-US-Mexican border or things that are very, very personal. And so I said, well, you asked for it and we're going to deliver it. And you can see that Joanna put up the PowerPoint presentation with all the different slides, and I'll say this one more time for our disclaimer, obviously very, very grotesque pictures and very hard to kind of look at that. But the attitude here for the Global Consortium is to listen to the students, to give the students a voice, and really to talk about global topics that are of interest to you. And so that's the reason that we're here today. So in 1 second, I'll introduce Sharon, and I'll just say this one more time so that everybody understands what the format is like. I'm going to introduce Sharon, and then we're going to sit down and watch a little YouTube clip of taking us into Juarez to kind of set the stage. As soon as we're done looking at the clip, I'll sit down and ask Sharon a couple leading questions so she can kick it off and talk a little bit about her work in Juarez and why she's so passionate about it. And after we do that for 20-25 minutes, I will turn it over to you, and you will be able to have that opportunity to ask any kind of questions that you want. All I ask of people is respect other people and not to be aggressive. This is about peace, love, and understanding and moving forward. And also, I'd like to say that we're not here to sensationalize the violence that's taking place in Juarez and other places, but it's to learn from it and kind of ask the question, where do we go from here, which is one of the last questions that we will talk about here. Our guest today, Sharon Allen, PhD, has spent the last 6 years researching, writing, and advocating for United States-Mexico border justice. She is the co-author and contributor of the anthology Walls, Fences, Borders, and Boundaries, Essays on Social Exclusion, Inclusion, and Integration. I don't think I could ever say that title again, all right? It's very long, all right? Kendall Hunt Publishing, 2010, and Voices from Juarez, in Wounded Border, Frontera Herida, Writings on the San Diego-Tijuana Region and Beyond, City Works Press, 2011. She has presented her research at a variety of conferences on borders and social conflict, including the American Sociological Association, the 106th Annual Meeting, Social Conflict, Multiple Dimensions, and Arenas in Las Vegas, August 2011. Binational Border Conference, San Diego, California, December 2010. She's also active in the Encuentros Leadership Academy in San Diego and has been a moderator and organizer of several immigration forums held throughout San Diego County. She will be sharing field research she conducted in Juarez, focusing on women and children in the month of November 2010. Can we give it up for our guest here?
This week, I'm in Juarez, Mexico, statistically the deadliest city on the planet. $40 billion worth of drugs are smuggled from Mexico into the US every year. Thousands are dying as rival cartels fight the police, the army, and each other in a battle to control these lucrative smuggling routes. I'm I'm going into Juarez to find out if there's any way out of the cycle of terror and intimidation that has turned this border town into a killing zone and brought the north of Mexico to the brink of civil war. That bridge you can see in the distance connects the United States of America to Mexico. And if you're to come over that bridge into the US, you'd be entering the town of El Paso, the second safest city in the whole of the United States of America. Alternatively, if you were to head south over that bridge, you'd be entering Mexico and the city of Juarez, currently the most dangerous city on the planet. Last year, 2,650 people were killed in drug-related incidents. The 2,000-mile-long border between the United States and Mexico divides two very different cultures. Juarez's geographical location has made it a center for smuggling for decades. But the recent increase in bloodshed has made its powerful neighbor extremely nervous. Before crossing into Juarez, I'm going to find out what America is doing to prevent the violence from seeping across the border. Standing right on the international border, Isabel Mullins leads the US Custom and Border Protection Unit, and she isn't shy when it comes to confronting the problem head-on.
You think that they're just window washers and vendors, but in reality they're conducting surveillance against our own operations in here. The majority of the ones that are hanging around here are the Barrio Seca gang members.
Right.
And we've got information that they want to take control of this port.
Right.
We're not going to let them do that. And I guess one of the biggest challenges that we face with them being here is that as the traffic gets, less and less, they start moving in, and before you know it, they're on their cell phones and they're saying, okay, this officer at lane 2.
He doesn't look as sharp as the officer in lane 3, so go for lane 2, etc.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. Our mission is keep terrorists from entering our country, keep criminals from entering. El Paso, right next door, we're the second safest city in the nation, and yet Ciudad Juarez is one of the most violent in the world. How do we do it? Front line of defense. We're the gatekeepers of America.
I'm now leaving the safety of the USA and crossing into Juarez.
Are you guys doing a documentary, or what are you guys doing?
Yeah. We'll make a documentary. We're going to spend a lot of time in Juarez. We're going to interview the mayor of Juarez, yeah.
Did you know it's kind of dangerous out there?
Well, I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan.
I think it's worse than Afghanistan.
The first thing that hits you is just how many uniformed armed men there are on the streets. 10,000 army and federal police have been drafted into Juarez to confront the organized crime groups known as cartels. The cartels have become incredibly rich and powerful from transporting huge amounts of narcotics through Mexico into the US and beyond. They defend their interests through a policy known as silver or lead. Those who refuse to accept their bribes are killed with a sadistic brutality intended to frighten and intimidate anyone who stands in their way. I'm on my way to meet the mayor of Juarez, who is responsible for calling in the new reinforcements. But before we get there, we run into a roadblock. Can you tell us just what's happened? What incident?
¿Qué fue lo que pasó? Desconocemos que pudo haber sido el ataque, pero nada más, lo único que nosotros vemos ahí en la escena es que hay dos personas del sexo masculino, una de aproximadamente unos 25 años, otra de aproximadamente unos 70.
And were they shot in the head?
In the head, en todo el cuerpo, all the body.
Many of the police disguise their identities. I was soon to find out that there's a very good reason for this. That's a homicide detective who's going to be investigating this case. Had this been yesterday, his boss would be investigating this case. But his boss was shot dead 2 hours ago. Reason given? Apparently he was very good at finding out who shot people here. And the powers that be, the illegal powers that be, didn't like that, so they had him killed. And that's why that man is wearing a mask, so no one gets to see exactly what he looks like. The shocking reality of everyday life in Juarez becomes apparent as the homicide detective uses a picture on his mobile phone to identify the victim to his family. During Mayor Ferez's term in office, there have been 6,000 murders in the city.
Thank you for agreeing to talk to us. You're responsible for calling the army into Juarez, is that correct?
Right.
Can you explain to me why you did that?
For about 15 years, corruption and organized crime has just been eating away at the police forces to the point that the police was actually working for the cartels. They were doing their jobs.
The police were actually working as sicarios for the cartels.
Right. They were. Many of the killings were done by police officers, and others were protected by police officers. And that was a tremendous part of the problem. We needed to do a cleanup. We've done in Juarez the biggest cleanup there's been in Mexico. We basically fired half of the police force within the last couple of years, so that we now have a police department that fights criminals instead of helping criminals.
The mayor was very open about the power of the cartels and the corruption that runs through Mexican society. Although we can see the United States from his window, life and death on this side of the border is very different. Even with the new presence of the army and the federal police, the murder rate rises by the day. This city has witnessed so many barbaric killings in the last few years that it has almost become numb to them. However, in January 2010, one horrific incident touched everyone, even Felipe Calderón, the president of Mexico.
Adrián. Horacio.
Horacio.
Huicho.
Huicho.
Él es Jesús.
All right, did he survive, yeah?
Sí.
Oh,
Pero
right.
mataron a su papá.
Edwin and his girlfriend Brisa were celebrating a friend's 16th birthday when around 6 masked gunmen arrived at the house and started shooting.
Y, o sea, no dijeron nada, no nos dijeron nada, ni arriba las manos, ni nada, o sea, llegaron disparando. Ya como nos vieron a todos los que nos acorralamos para allá, se fueron atrás de nosotros y ahí nos llegaron disparándole a todo, y cuando se les acabaron las balas empezaron a cargar otra vez las pistolas. Yo recibí 11.
Y yo recibí 3.
No me quiero perder. Ya se están acabando. Están cerrando por lo mismo los negocios. Están cerrando todo porque tienen miedo.
Me di cuenta que abrieron una llave al agua, pero era pura sangre. Así.
La sangre se venía así como así como en la guita, en charrito. Empecé a sentir caliente, lo saltaba y
Caliente.
de otras personas.
And how many people were killed?
17.
17 people killed.
Más lento, por favor.
Edwin and Brisa have had to move away from the neighborhood where the massacre took place and seek refuge elsewhere.
One straight for your ankle, and the exit wound is?
¿Dónde salió?
Por el talón.
The heel, there.
But I went back to the scene of the massacre to see how local residents are coping with the loss. nobody has yet been charged with the murders.
There's an image here that's been used quite a lot in this area. It's Felipe Calderón, the president, who many people here believe is responsible for a lot of the violence because he doesn't do anything about it. His sash has got the pig's head on it, and out of his mouth he's carrying a rope that's strangling Juarez, and he's allowing Juarez to run with blood.
Luis Maria Davila lost two sons, Jose Luis, age 16, and Marcos, age 19. 1 week after the massacre, she publicly confronted President Calderón.
Mire, es poco lo que yo recuerdo. Y que si a él le mataran a un hijo, que él hasta debajo de las piedras lo buscaría, porque él sí tenía los medios y yo no.
The only way Edwin survived was to play dead. He took 11 bullets as he lay amongst his dead and dying friends. Crime, corruption and paranoia are so rife in Juarez that it's going to be difficult to get to the truth. Here, even the bravest are too frightened to talk.
If you could face the people that killed your sons, would you have anything to say to them? And if you did, what would it be?
Si los enfrentara. No, yo nomás. No sé qué decirle.
Next, we travel deeper into the heart of Juarez.
Left.
We're on a path that will lead us to a dangerous and revealing encounter.
How big is the cartel that you work for?
I'm in Juarez, Mexico, the city with the highest recorded murder rate on the planet. I'm trying to find out why the violence has spun out of control and why executions are carried out in such a brutal fashion.
This is just a brutal fact of what life is like here in Juarez. This is Sunday morning and 3 people are already dead. I mean, it's just gone 11. If we go by the averages, while we've been here, 6 more people will die before the sun goes down and 6 more will die through the night.
This execution has been carried out in a public place in broad daylight. It would appear to me that the ones pulling the triggers have very little to fear.
Guy's clearly been shot numerous times. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shells, cartridges, very close to the body. So imagine he's obviously been shot in the head as well. His jaw is actually, if you really want to know, his jaw has actually come off as well. And I would guess, looking at him, he's not that old at all. I'd say he's in his early 20s. Annalie, do you know what happened here? Why that man's dead? Do you know why?
No, pues no, quién sabe.
Do you live here?
¿Yo? Yo sí. Aquí en este barrio.
Are you shocked by that, or do you think that's quite normal?
Bastante normal, porque pues...
Normal, it's normal, huh?
Es normal. No se le hace raro a uno.
Doesn't,
No.
So have you got used to this? Have you got used to seeing dead people on the street?
Sí.
Most of the people that carry guns around here, aren't they involved in crime? Aren't they involved in trafficking or in extortion?
Sí, pues sí. Pero pues es que ahora están matando hasta mucha gente que pues ya no ni la debe ni la teme. Y ahora están matando mucha gente que pues no.
Aren't you scared living here? You scared?
Yo sí, ya me voy a ir a vivir por otro lado.
Where are you going to live?
Pues quién sabe. A un lado donde haya menos violencia que aquí.
Okay, should we
Sure.
kick it off after that? I think it. 15
Yeah,
minutes
I can leave now. That's pretty much it.
All right, so why don't we kick it off? I know that you were in Juarez, and give the students here a little background about how you got there, what was the purpose of going into Juarez, and just basically tell your story here.
What I would possibly be doing in Juarez? As John mentioned, I was there last year, and I spent quite a bit of time talking with NGOs, reporters, human rights organizations, individual people who had lost loved ones. I can't think of all the people I talked to. I went to several English language classes, talked to a lot of kids, talked to a lot of families. And this has become an interest of mine over time. My focus is areas with border conflict, violence, and its effects on the people that have to put up with it, which is usually women and children. It's part of a larger study. I'm also doing, I'm looking at borders on a global basis, basically. And so I ended up there. And people were, in spite of all the violence you've seen, in spite of all of the tremendous insanity that goes on, they were warm, they were loving, they were kind, they opened their hearts to me, they opened their lives to me. I've since had a conference here where I then, in San Diego, I put on a conference with some other people, and we brought in educators from El Paso, from the University of UTEP, and NGOs from Juarez, and other researchers from Tijuana, to try to start a dialogue, to try to start to understand that this is not their problem, okay? This is our problem.
Okay. So when you're referring to that, we hear that kind of blame game all the time, and I assume you're talking about the money and the guns and all the weapons that come from the United States, and also the fact that we're doing the drugs here in the United States, so that
supply and demand. It's supply and demand, number one. Yeah. And you know, I guess what I want to say too before we get started here is, although we're talking about Juarez today, this sexual violence against women, this violence against children, it is not a phenomenon in Mexico. It is not a phenomenon of Juarez. You know, the patriarchal discourse, since men could stand up on their hind legs, has been a violent one. And even before racism, there was violence against the only chattel they had, which was women. Okay, so whether Eve is being blamed for the woes of original sin, or, you know, whether in India the practice of sati, which is, you know, you are thrown on a funeral pyre when your husband dies, to, you know, the horrendous, whoa, sorry.
Now you're in surround sound.
I know. to the horrendous violence perpetrated on women in the United States. Okay, statistics with National Organization of Women in 2003. Do you know what the #1 cause of death of pregnant women is? Homicide. Homicide. There were 1,200 intimate victim crimes against women and deaths that occurred. 1,200 in 2005. That's 3 murders a day in the United States. Okay, in the United States. So, you know, violence against women and unfortunately against children is epidemic proportions in the world.
I was wondering if you could give us a little background. A lot of my students have knowledge of this, but a lot of other people don't. There were so many factors. We were talking a little bit earlier before. We had the presentation, and I was sharing this little story with you that there was a kid on the street, and somebody came around and gave him a cell phone and gave him $40 a week and said, as long as you watch these particular cars and call in if you see this particular car, you're going to get paid $40 US a week, and we're going to give you a cell phone, unlimited texting, and all that other kind of stuff. And and there's just so many different socioeconomic factors into what's going on. And I was wondering if you could just, in a nutshell, kind of break it down. What are some of the factors, the maquilas, what women are getting involved in, just to kind of make some sense of how this is taking place. And then maybe kind of a follow-up on here, showing this. I really debated showing the pictures. Joanna sent me the PowerPoint. We talked about it. I said, should I show it? And I don't know if I should, and I think there's a reason we want to get people moving and look at this and say it's got to shock you to actually do something. And the one thing that we saw these pictures of the violence, I can understand drugs, and I can understand making money, and I can understand the power. When I see those vivid pictures, I just can't understand why someone would chop somebody's head off or hang you from a freeway or bury you out in the desert. So I was hoping maybe you could just kind of set the stage for all the socioeconomic differences that are taking place in Juarez and elsewhere.
Well, I don't know if it'll make any more sense once I finish talking about it. It's unfortunate. Human life is not worth much, and that's unfortunately, it becomes a method of achieving commerce. But you had the maquiladoras are a factor. Okay, this globalization of the workforce is definitely a factor. You also have so many different levels of military and police throughout Mexico, and unfortunately, you have federales, you have state, you have local, you have military. And then you have special forces that you've seen. So you have all of these different levels, okay? And the truth of the matter is, unfortunately, that wherever they send the police or wherever they send federal troops to come in and deal with things, the crime and murder rate has gone up 500%. Okay, it's gone up 500%. And you have situations where the military is starting to be well paid. There's great benefits. You have vacation time. You have retirement money. You have 401ks, you've got, all of these great benefits, all right? But on top of that, you have the reality that was being shown, and that is if a cartel zeroes in on you and they want your help, they'll throw money at you, but you will do what they say or they will kill every single person in your family. Every single person. Okay. Then you have on top of that, when the maquiladoras, they were gone for a few years. They came, well, not completely gone, but that went down because Asia and other markets were being looked at. But then they found that there were problems with that, so they started to come back. And even when they came back, there were 10% fewer factories, 10% fewer workers. But what happened was they started to hire women by the thousands. Okay, so what they found was women worked for less and they worked harder. So although there were 10% fewer factories and 10% fewer workers, their production and output went up 40% from 2000 to 2006, something like that. All right, it's staggering. But what is created also is a very desperate situation with men, okay, because they're out of work. And they are desperate to try to take care of their families, but there's no way to get work. And so it's breaking up families. Alcoholism and drug use in Mexico has gone up tremendously. Families are being fragmented. Women are going to work. And the thing is, no one's watching the kids. No one's watching the kids at all. And I spoke with several NGOs that have daycare centers, and they have, what they try to do is have houses throughout the colonias that has a mother that will take 10, 15, 20 kids during the day. The problem is that if you make $40 a week as a maquiladora worker, you're working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. chances are you don't really live on an easy transportation line, and a lot of the daycares are not near easy transportation. And of that $40, close to 20 of it is going for daycare. So you have 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds taking care of 9-month-old 1-year-olds. You know, and the kids are the ones that are suffering. The kids are the ones that are, you know, doing everything from, you know, having to cook a meal at 4 years old to having to change diapers, to having to, you know, feed their infant brother or sister. So, I mean, it's just so complicated, and it's very multi-layered that...
We had a show on the U.S. Institute of Peace came with a child soldier from Africa who had finally made it through college. And I get some of that kind of background material too, where you look at people that are being violent and militaristic and very aggressive and say, well, why are these people doing that? But you don't understand the external pressures that are being put on these soldiers. And I see parallels with what you're talking about in Mexico. You see somebody who's, you know, doing all this violence. I understand what kind of pressure. If you don't do this, we're going to go out there and kill your whole family. You know, so you got to put all the bits and pieces together to try to unravel it. Can you talk a little bit about femicide and talk about the sexual, you know, violence against women? I mean, there's so many different parts here. I think that film was talking a lot about the cartels, and it was talking about the drugs, and there was a conflict in 2007, 2008 between the two major cartels for control of the corridor, you know, coming into the United States. So there's that, but there's another kind of flavor. There's so many facets here about the women in Juarez and graphic videos and films, you know, finding women decapitated in the desert and just all that. And we're talking about this before. It's not something that is limited to Mexico. It's not just a phenomenon that's there. It's in a lot of other places. And maybe you could speak to that a little bit, and then maybe we can open up a conversation here.
Well, you know, feminicides was a term that is used usually to address specifically sexual violence and murder against women. Okay, and what was happening in the late 80s, early 90s was that they were starting to see a high incident of missing young women. Okay, and the missing young women, it kind of depended on who you talked to and what kind of statistics you got a hold of. And even today, you know, several different departments can report on the same exact topic, and you'll get completely different numbers, right? So what was happening was these young women were going missing, and first they thought it was just, you know, naturally it's the women's fault, right? They deserved it. They shouldn't have been doing this. They shouldn't have been doing that, and you know, so you know they've obviously run off with their boyfriend. They've obviously, you know, they're not good girls anyway, and so because the first thing is, you know, you need to blame the victim within a patriarchal society. So.
I'm picking up what you're telling me here.
Yeah, but the thing is that they started to find these bodies outside the city. Okay, and these were women. They were murdered. They were mutilated. Okay, their bodies were completely mutilated, and they were. So a bunch of people got blamed. It's this person. It's that person. It's this. It's that. A lot of false arrests were made, and the women still are missing. They're still missing. Now, at one particular time, they started to notice that a large percentage of them were coming from maquiladoras. Okay, and the maquiladoras at that particular time, they had buses that would run straight to the maquiladoras, but then you would be dropped at different points in the city, and then you would be responsible for getting home from there. And so what they discovered, however, over a period of time, was bodies, female bodies, were being dumped in open, vacant lots in the city. It's like they didn't even care anymore. They weren't even trying to deposit the bodies outside the city limits. Now there were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bodies in one dump site on a vacant lot, and the decomposition showed years. Okay? Now the thing that's so interesting is that when police would go to check out a crime scene, okay, they not only was evidence lost and you know the whole place mishandled, but then they would come back, you know, a month or two later where there's another body, and then they would find another body from a year earlier. You know what I mean? So there was not even any consistency. The long and the short of it is, most of these women go completely, the cases are unsolved, okay? Or there's a patsy, somebody is you know, forced to take the blame for it, and they're accused. Some have had jail sentences. But the thing about it is this: they have found that about 2/3 of the women meet the femicide model. Okay, they were the sexual violence, the torture, the mutilated bodies, but 2/3 of them show signs of domestic violence. Okay, so that's how pervasive it is, and that's how difficult it is. And they've also found that a lot of, that Teresa Rodriguez, Daughters of Juarez, is a chilling, you know, really chilling book. And she talks a lot about this, and she actually gets into what some of the, those that were accused that ended up being let go, but they were cartel members, or they were police officers, or they were military of some kind. They were forced into running drugs, and they would run drugs and get across the border and be just completely elated that they got away with it. And so, you know, what are we going to do? We're going to get drunk and rape women. Okay, and so they were mutilating women. Their nipples would be sliced off, and they would wear them around their necks in chains. Okay, and where do you put something like that in your psyche? You know, that's the thing that, you know, where does something like that go in your psyche? And so and this was a time when there was like less than 400 women, you know, 400 people a year being murdered. You know, and they're anticipating that the numbers could hit 5,000 by the end of this year. Okay, and that's men, women, children. Children are being murdered in record number. I mean, you know, you saw some of these. So what was thought to be a chilling epidemic in the late 80s and early 90s, many are saying was just a very macabre precursor to absolutely staggering situation where you know, an entire city is being held hostage.
Would you be willing to take a couple questions? Would this be a good time to have a little break? And
sure. Oh yeah, sure. No, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I wanted to just mention a couple quick things. We're really blessed here today to have our guest speaker with all their field experience and sharing this with you. And as I told you, I pride myself on the fact that everybody has a voice in here, that it isn't just listening to profs get up like we always do, and that you have your voice. We're a little bit hamstrung today because we have 2 microphones right down the aisles, and we have a couple that are hooked up here. But I'd like to open it up for any comments, observations, and questions. Because we are taping this, one of the things we like to do is be able to hear it through the microphone so other people can hear it, even though I can hear you just fine. So if we have any comments, stories people want to share, please, let's take advantage of the situation. We only have Sharon here for a little while, and I'm sure that we have some stories and questions here. So does anybody want to ask any questions? Jump in front of a microphone. Any questions? Yeah, Michael, please.
Good afternoon. My question was, usually when I hear about the drug cartels, usually the first thing that comes to my mind is the gang MS-13. My question was, as far as the conflict in Juarez and just all over Mexico, is it one particular gang that's causing most of the problems, or is it many cartels, or how exactly is that working right now?
My understanding is that there are several cartels, and it's operating at several different levels. You know, I talked to this one older woman. She was in her 60s or 70s, and you know, several male family members were murdered, and so she was trying to make a living. There was this little slice in the wall in between 2 buildings, and she had put up a little table there to sell gum, chiclets, and you know, candies and some juices. And some ruffians came and turned her table upside down, took all her stuff, and took all her money. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just the sensationalized stuff. Sure, that's the cartels, but and there's many of them, but it's just happening at all levels now, you know.
I think it's my understanding, too, with respect to the cartels, that many of the cartels are turning on their former allies, and there's been a real contest, as I was mentioned, in 2007, 2008. El Chapo, Shorty? Bilingual? Anyway, that you pick out that when people start to turn on people that were the former allies, and it's just a massive control, and I use that word, kind of the corridor that goes into El Paso. You know, we're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars of money, and it depends on who controls that. So a lot of people started to turn on each other in the different groups, and also to employ gang members to do their work for them. You know, so we have different groups that are starting to do that fighting, where they were allies and working with each other. Now they're working against each other, which has made things very convoluted.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have other questions? People that want to pass my class? I knew I would get somebody very quickly. Please, if you have stories, comments, this is it. You're supposed to be your time. Yes.
Hi, my name's Nayeli. The question is, from my understanding now, not just Mexican, but anyone that's trying to get their residency, they have to go to Juarez, in order to do that process. Why are they sending them to Juarez with all this violence going on? I don't know if you can answer that.
You know, are you talking about if any particular Mexican citizen is looking for?
Yeah, let's say
that they have to. No, not according to my understanding. You could go into any port of entry.
Because I have had a friend who was he was born in Mexico, came at 9 months, was sent back to Mexico in order to get his residency. He was sent to Juarez. He had no choice. He had to go there. So it's because I remember when he went, he was really scared. He didn't want to go to Juarez. He knew what was going on. Just wondering why are we sending people over there when they're trying to get the residency?
Maybe they don't want them to get it when they're going to Juarez. That would be my first inclination.
Yeah,
you know,
it has to be some kind of internal control thing they're doing. Yeah, there's not any laws that say it equivocally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we got to pick up. Yes. Can you jump to a microphone? Because you do. I can hear you fine, but the people watching it cannot hear, and we want to hear what your question is. It must be a worthwhile question.
Well, it's more than a story. My name is Claudia Garcia, and actually I'm from Colombia. And this is really disturbing for me, because I live that. I know what it is. And women are treated like trophies for the lords of the drug cartels. And it's not one cartel, it's many cartels, many levels. And you're being educated at schools where you have to study with people who has their kids who belongs from the cartels, and people who's been trained with mercenaries, those graphics, pictures, probably nothing for what I have seen before. This is not a problem that only happens in Mexico. It's something that has been happening since 1970 and past the border from Colombia to Mexico. And unfortunately, nobody has done anything about it. It's something that is not only about the children, it's something that is not about only the women, it's not only about the men, it's also about the loss of the society, of the morals, the ethics. And I'm really disturbing because it drove me all the way down there when I ran away from Colombia because of this. The guerrilla in Colombia also has a lot to do with this, guerrilla as well. And the worst part is knowing that we are being protected by the police when the reality is another one. It's not only that the police officers in these countries, their income is so low and not educated at all. Anybody can be a police officer in these countries. Anybody can have those titles as a sergeant or captains in these police forces. And anybody can be part of the cartels or most of the people that you've seen in the Lord's mafia, most of them are supposed to be ex-cops or ex-forces from any of these countries. So honestly, I really appreciate that you guys took the time to bring this up. Unfortunately for me, it's really painful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Claudia, I really applaud your courage to get up there and tell it. Claudia already took an exam with me, too. You talk about pain in a day. World Civilization exam, then come in and do this. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, please.
Hi, my name is Jose Murillo. My question is, what role does NAFTA play into the violence that's occurring in Mexico? Because from my understanding, that's growing up as a kid, before NAFTA, you've always heard about the cartels and, mostly like the Sinaloa cartel, but it's not something that was commonly talked about, but you hear about it. But only after NAFTA and after the opening of the borders do we start seeing the big, a lot of these cartels begin to pop up all throughout Mexico. The Gulf Cartel, the Familia, El Pacifico, and all these cartels. So what is it, does NAFTA have to play a role in that?
Of course it does. Yeah, it does. I'm not an expert on NAFTA. I do know that NAFTA has created an environment, okay, that is so complicated and convoluted that it, never mind what the cartels are doing, okay, the workers themselves are in a state of flux. You have individual, well, I call them mom and pop stores, right, that were able to make a living, whether it was fresh vegetables or whether it was selling coffee pots or whatever it is at the local store. Well, now you go into various places in Mexico, and I spend a lot of time in Baja as well. Those little mom and pop stores can't be sustained anymore, okay? Because Walmart has come in and Home Depot has come in, and I understand the dynamic. I don't especially appreciate it, but that's a whole other political discussion that I don't even want to get into right now. But the problem is that you have wages now. When you have Walmart being the #1 employer in Mexico, okay, and they're setting wages that are for the entire working class country virtually, and the wages, how is it that you can make, I don't get it, I don't. How is it that you can make 70 pesos, and I think it's around 70 pesos. I don't know exactly. It's around 70 pesos a day in Walmart on this side of the line a day. And then on this side of the line, you're making $9, $10 an hour. Okay, so it's you also have the issues on goods and services and pricing and how things are priced. There's forced pricing that goes on. It is not necessarily free trade, quote unquote. So it's complicated. And again, I'm not an expert on it, but I know that it's another layer. It's another layer that's kind of being added into it. And I just wanted to say to you also that I really appreciate your honesty, and I wish I had an answer. I wish I had an answer. And obviously, I'm the type of researcher that I can't sit up here and just quote numbers to you. And I told John, I said, we can talk about this and we can talk about anything, but just be prepared for my emotions, okay? Because it is an epidemic, and it is so. There's this one woman, Olivia Ruiz, and she's amazing. She's written extensively, and she teaches in Tijuana as well as San Diego and Southern California. And she went in and did an extensive study. She spoke to about 500 women throughout various battered women houses in Mexico, okay? And she started to talk to them. She said, I haven't read her whole research. I just listened to a talk that she gave and spoke with her afterwards. She was talking about, she said, what you have to understand is this. She said, when women are asked questions about the sexual violence they've experienced, okay, they usually look at you initially somewhat blankly. And you know, what do you mean? Well, have you experienced sexual violence before this? You know, you ended up here in this home, and I know that you've experienced now recently, but you know, has this chronic? Has it been experienced? And again, you know, what are you talking about? They were not really understanding what was being asked, because when Olivia finally got to the bottom of it, the question that these women had was, what other kind of sex is there? What other kind of sex is there? Women don't know what it's like to have sex in a non-violent way. It's all been violent, okay? So when I'm standing in a room and I'm talking to a woman and she's bawling her eyes out, you know, I am bawling my eyes out too, because it takes a lot to be able to, again, I keep thinking of containers, you know, when you start hearing these stories, you know, we become containers to hold them, and I have to sit with it a while, you know. When I got back from Juarez, I had to like decompress for about a month, because it's again and again and again.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I did a show on Burmese political prisoners. It was a gentleman who was in insane prison for 14 years, and they hit him so badly that he was blind, and he started to choke up when I was interviewing him, and he got all emotional. I said, John, keep it together, man. You know, you're doing the interview, and he was just talking about. It's so interesting to hear people say, I was only in prison for 14 years. I have friends who have been there 21, 24, 30 years or something like that. And then obviously it's a very emotional thing. But David, you had a question.
Yes, I wanted to piggyback off of the NAFTA question, because I've seen in the last 20 years of Mexican politics, it's differed with PRI getting out of the office for 70 years and then being replaced by Vicente Fox and Felipe Calderon, as well as NAFTA. What I know of NAFTA, it's the North American Free Trade Agreement that was signed in 1996 by Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The reason it hits home for me, because transnational companies would start going to Mexico and Canada to be paid less. The reason it hit home for me is my dad used to work for Toyota as a press operator. He was making around $26 an hour. He got hurt on the job, no longer has a job because Toyota moved to Tijuana, where they now do the same job for $6 an hour. So what's happened now is that they indeed have jobs and they're available. They have corporate jobs and nice corporate structures. However, they get paid nothing. So therefore, I can see how the relationship between the women could result from that, because if they're getting the jobs to get paid less, they don't have any jobs to resort to selling drugs. And I think the funny thing is that the United States has 60% of the consumption rate of drugs. We're the highest consumer in drugs, and yet we're just, 2 hours away. And at the same time, we're struggling for jobs here, and we don't have jobs because we've given them away to Mexican residents who can't even pay for basic things such as education or health.
Okay.
So.
Well, we don't give them away. That's a whole other story too. But.
Please, can you just? I know I got to get you up there, but so we can hear your question on that microphone.
Yeah, not that we're giving the jobs away, but it's that the global economy has allowed for American companies, Canadian companies, even foreign companies as Japan, to go to Mexico and exploit these workers. I mean, so we can't sit there and blame the workers. When they're living in poverty, they're going to take whatever they can.
Right. No, that's what I was trying to say. That they're getting paid nothing. So therefore, I feel like that's the reason they have to resort to selling drugs, because they get offered more money and they want to take care of their family. They're just like you and I. I agree. I don't think it's the workers' fault. They're put in these conditions. They can't even get a proper education in Mexico. You go to a school in Mexico, it's corrupt. Not unless you can afford a private education can you go into politics. You could even see the same thing with politics in Mexico. It's also corrupt. But I agree with you. Yes, I think they're giving them the jobs. However, they're exploiting the hell out of them.
Right, and as long as they don't let them unionize, then the people that are trying to unionize are also being killed. So that, it's a lot more easier to be able to exploit the workers without them having a representative to be up there and speaking for them and give them their rights. And so usually, a lot of times we always hear in America, even on the news, Bill O'Reilly and all the other cats, these Mexico's taking our jobs. But necessarily, it's the way the system is structured. As long as you got a very small percentage of rich, and you got all these poor, we always got people to exploit.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, the reality of the matter is that jobs have been leaving this country for decades. And it's only now that our economy is so starkly revealing it in a myriad of different ways that people are freaking out. Jobs were going to India, customer service jobs, jobs that were like, you know, $25,000 a year jobs. They were disappearing to India a decade ago. You know, and if you have a state-controlled system, right? Asia, you know, a lot of factory workers, you know, and various corporations moving to Asia, Malaysia. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So we have not been a producer of jobs for, you know, again, decades, and we are feeling the effects of it now. And so what usually happens is that within a hierarchical system, right, there's those that are in, there's those that are out. There's those that are right, there's those that are wrong. There's those that are good, there's those that are bad. So it's all hierarchical, right? Somebody's always on top and somebody's always on the bottom. And so when you get up against the wall, the easiest thing to do is blame the other. Okay, it's the other. It's the other's fault. It's the other. If they didn't do this, then that wouldn't happen. If they, and you know, and so it's always easiest to blame the ones that are least capable of defense.
Is it about 3 o'clock? I'm guessing.
Yeah, is it?
I just look at my students' faces and I know what time it is. I'm not joking. All right, now, having said that, battery and anyway, have you guys just take the opportunity. It's just like one of those things, Sharon will get in the car in a half hour and she'll be gone, and all those little questions that are in your head, I'm really thinking about asking it, but I haven't done it. You know, this is the time to be brave. And anybody have any stories to share? Anything else? Please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Joanna. I'm from El Salvador. I came here when I was 8 years old. And since we're talking about violence today, I just wanted to point out the violence that is increasing in my country. I went to visit El Salvador 2 years ago, and it was really horrible, the situations that these people are living. My aunt and other people who own a business in El Salvador, they have to pay rent. Weekly rent to what we call, we don't have carteles, but we have Las Maras who have taken over. And no one can prosper in El Salvador because you have to be giving the money to these individuals who are stealing from you, who are committing murders. Where I live, there's like a small river. They found children, women decapitated, and it's horrible. They come into your house at any time, and they kill you for no reason, and people are afraid to speak out because they're scared that they might kill their families, and I think it's a horrible situation that people over there are living in. And one of the theories is that after the Civil War that happened after the 1980s, all the children that were orphans weren't educated, so they were left in the streets to live by themselves, you know. And when a person is, I believe that education is the road to success, you know. They could take everything away from you, but they can't take their education. So you have all these kids in the streets who particularly, they have no one to look after them, and they turn their family is now the gangs. So that's one of the theories that why this is happening. But I think globally we're having violence increase, and I don't know if something can be done, and the government can't control it. So I want to ask you if something can be done.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I think this needs to be our poster child for education. We got to get you a big education is the way out. So.
Yeah, and of course, education is key. But again, that is complicated in and of itself. You know, I realize that not everybody can travel into these very volatile areas and try to build bridges. And I wouldn't want everybody to. Okay, but there are certain things that we can do here. Okay, you could take an example from the Arab Spring. Okay, where you have here a situation where the geography proves to be a problem. Okay, in Egypt, and I lived in Egypt for several years, and other, you know, Algeria and other areas, they could not physically gather together to protest initially. Okay, initially. So what they did was they took their, I always find it fascinating, you know, Westerners use internet like tools like Facebook and other things to, you know, brag to each other. but other countries use it to empower themselves, okay? So we could start empowering ourselves by building bridges and networks in very volatile, violence-ridden areas. You know, extend yourself out over the internet and start to get to know people and start to talk to them. Ask them what they need. Okay, that's the one thing about this ugly American syndrome that Westerners always end up getting into. We want to fix everybody before we even know what the problem is. Okay,
we fix ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Start fixing ourselves. There's plenty to do. But before you can really do anything, don't you really need to find out what's going on? And that's part of it too. Don't assume that just because I'm sitting here yakking at you that this is the final word. This is the beginning of a conversation. Extend yourself out into the internet community and start to connect with people in areas. Start to reconnect with family members, reconnect with other people. Start developing a dialogue, okay? You can also get involved here. I think immigration reform is key. Is absolutely key. And we can make a difference in terms of immigration reform. You know, so there's many things that we can do that we can do in spite of how the government is operating right now. You fidgeting, all right? Like, did I go over?
No. When I tell you, you're taking.
Okay.
Wrap it up. Let's go. No, I'm joking around. I want to just come in here, Joanna. Would you like to say before I have Joanna's going to say something here, make a comment? It is really down to Joanna that we had this conference here today. I'd like to give her a round of applause for demanding that we. Is your green light on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can.
A little louder.
Okay. So I went to Juarez last year, May. And on my way there, I was told that I shouldn't speak Spanish, that my Spanish wasn't Mexican enough to be spoken. So I was just advised not to talk. But I was picked out right away. Everybody knew that I was American. They told me to dress down as much as I could, and I did. But right away, the police over there asked me for my passport, for my identification card, and they're like, "Oh, so where are you going? Where are you gonna be staying? Who's there?" And well, I just told them, "Well, I don't know the address or anything. I just know how to get there." And they were like, "Oh, okay. So, but who's gonna be there? And what are you gonna do here?" And I just told them everything. And it was just weird I had been there so many times as a child, and Juarez is so empty now. Everything is so horrible. Like on my way there, I saw 3 coroner vans taking care of what they do, picking up a dead body, going to another place, and that was just inside of Juarez. That was from the bus terminal to the outskirts of Juarez, which took us an hour to get out of Juarez. I just can't imagine living there every day and seeing that. Also, I wanted to tell Dr. Haas a story that my cousin, she was dating a police officer, and one day he went to go pick her up, and he picked her up, and when she got inside of the car, she looked in the back seat, and there was a girl
a dead girl in the back seat. And he just had covered her with the tarp, but you could see her hand coming out. So when she sat down, she's like, you know what, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm just not gonna go out tonight. He's all like, why? What's wrong? She's like, no, I'm just not feeling well. He's all like, no, come on, let's go. I'll treat you to food and we can go out dancing. Trying to sweet talk her. She's like, no, I think I'm just gonna stay in. After that, he kept like insisting and insisting. So they actually had to move towns because he kept insisting too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you know, the thing is, the reality of the situation is, okay, many cartel members are U.S. citizens. Many drug carriers, U.S. citizens. Many, or they have dual citizenship. Okay, you all read about the hit. They said hit man. I would not call a 14-year-old a man that lived in U.S. citizen San Diego. Okay, was going into Mexico. 500 pesos a day. I mean, 500 pesos per body. Okay, somebody could kill a person and get 500 pesos. And that's a lot of money in Mexico. Okay, that's less than $50 here. But when people, you also have gun runners. A lot of them U.S. citizens, and by the way, I support the military here in the United States because they have sacrificed greatly for us. Okay, but it is hard to read. A Navy SEAL smuggling guns in from Afghanistan, and then all of those guns ending up in Mexico. Okay, so it's a very complicated and overwhelming and mind-boggling thing. Okay, what the hell is going on? How the hell did a U.S. serviceman think that it was a good idea to sell guns in Mexico? Okay, and I'm outraged and I'm confused. But then also you have not only cartel members, but you have U.S. citizens that go across every day, and they end up doing things that they shouldn't be doing. That they just shouldn't be doing, and they're adding to the situation. They're adding, so it's not. So again, okay, it's not their problem. All right, it's our problem. Okay.
I see a bunch of people, which is good, and I'm kind of watching the time. We were over here, so when we go over here, David, you're in line for another one. I'll get Daniel in 1 second, and then we'll get Eric. So just please go ahead.
I'm just gonna counter with the Salvador because I'm American Salvadorian, but it's hard for me to hear my mom call me and tell me, "Can you give me $50?" Because someone just called your aunt and they're gonna kill your cousin if you don't pay $50.
So the extortion money you're talking about here, $50, and someone's gonna.
No. They call. They don't kidnap people anymore. They simply just give you a call and they're like, if you don't pay, someone's gonna go next to you. It's to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your bravery.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
You know, I got to tell you, I was talking with young kids, and they go to school now, and then when they come home, their parents take out of their backpacks their homework or whatever. There's extortion notes in the backpacks. Okay, you have to start paying me X number of dollars, and it's not pesos, or else your child is going to disappear or come home one day without a finger or a foot. Okay, it is horribly chronic. I have a friend that runs some daycare centers, and they're dispersed throughout the city. And one day she gets a frantic call from the mother that runs one of them. She was a group of cartels came in, knocked on the door, guns in hand. You will give us X number of dollars by midnight, or else we will lock all these doors and burn this house to the ground with all the kids in it. What do? You know, there's like 140,000 children in need of daycare there, and there's facilities that are barely that can handle 10,000 of them. You know, she had to close down the center. She had to get the kids out of there quick, and she had to close down the center, and the house is abandoned right now. It's horrible. It's horrible.
I just wanted to say, I think we could all come to agreement that exploitation should not be allowable. We've seen it with NAFTA exploiting workers. We've seen it with the drug war. We're also exploiting ourselves, though. When I came to Cerritos College 4 years ago, I was paying $20 a unit. It's now, how much? $36 a unit. I think that's ridiculous. I think that it's ridiculous that we don't have jobs, and we go to the gas station and it's skyrocketing. Nope. I have a college degree from UC Irvine, campus honor student. I cannot find a job to save my life. I'm now over too qualified because people are more concerned about money than they are about people. If we don't do anything about the exploitation, nothing's going to happen. We'll just be in the same room 2 years from now talking about the same thing.
Right, David. Thank you. We're going to go over real quick, and then we'll get down to Daniel. I haven't forgotten you. I'm glad we have people asking questions, and we're running out of time, so I'm trying to get everybody in here. I don't want to understand. Please.
Hello, Professor Allen. I'm glad you came here today. I'm actually president of the Global Studies Club. My name is Eric Acosta, and my question is, well, to start off, a lot of this conflict that is happening in Mexico sounds a lot like the conflict that were happening in Africa over the conflict diamonds due to supply and demand. Do you think, like, using the same formula where you exploit all the graphic images that happen over the conflict diamonds, could you use the same formula to exploit all the images that are happening in Mexico to educate the youth to not turn into cocaine or crack or any of that stuff? Because cocaine is the biggest cash crop in Mexico. So that would, that in itself would, cut the supply of the funds, which is how they get their guns. So do you think that would work to educate the youth by actually having like a shock and awe to the youth?
I think yes. I think education on any level is key, number one. Okay, and I also think that you could certainly take any particular violence-ridden area that's being exploited. There's usually exploitation going on someplace, whether you're exploiting people or resources or whatever. And that, yes, you do have to make an attempt to educate. And it's difficult. It is really difficult because you're fighting multi-tiered issues that have everything to do with the government to the individuals themselves. But absolutely, I definitely think that education is key.
Okay, I'm going to just intervene real quickly here, given the fact I think it's probably about 3:15 somewhere down there, and I have to say thank yous and all that stuff out there. So we have a couple people. We can get to the questions. I see the line, and it's getting up there, which I'm really. So there's only you three up there. But Daniel,
that's not a big line.
Yeah, we just try to get these kind of crisp and clear and quick questions, and then we'll see if we can get them all done. Dan, please.
Hi, my name is Daniel Sheras, and I actually have two questions. My first question is, how can El Paso, Texas be the second safest city in the country when Juarez, its neighboring city, is the most dangerous city in the world?
Right.
And my second question is, how is all the violence and the drug running and everything in Juarez affecting the rest of Mexico?
The first one is, isn't that fascinating? You know, I find images and symbols extremely important. And I find that a designated line, right, is what determines what's safe and what's not. Borders in and of themselves are an interesting phenomena. But what's important to understand is borders are created, and they start in the mind. And then from the mind, they go out. And again, it goes back to this hierarchical dialectic, I call it. It's a hierarchical rhetoric, okay? You have violence. I have peace. You are terrorists. I am ambassador, right? We define ourselves by what we're not just as much as by what we are. And the unfortunate thing about this kind of rhetoric is that it's often defined, we're the safest city in the world, right up against the most violent. Who in their right mind would want to promote that? That's what I find one of the most interesting things, as if it's a good thing. I would be ashamed if I lived next door to wife beaters and children rapists, and you know, if I lived in a neighborhood like that, I would have a fit. I would, like, you know, I don't know what I'd do. It would be intolerable. And I have walls that separate me from my neighbor. But so, you know, I have a hard time understanding that too. It gets me all riled up, as you can see, so I'm not, and I don't have an answer. But I think it has a lot to do with this dynamic of, you know, separate and divide and the rhetoric and all of that stuff that starts in our heads, and then we end up projecting it out to the street. And yes, it has affected all of Mexico at so many different levels, because you have, you know, you have this idea of, because of the poverty to begin with, and the opportunity for work, any kind of opportunity for work. So you have a mass movement of people that are coming from the south and heading towards the north. And then you have the reality of how difficult it is to make that border crossing. And then you have the reality of, if you can or if you cannot, you're like stuck. You're almost like forced into this box and this void known as Juarez, and you have to like navigate your way through there, so that, you know, if you're forced to work in a maquilladora, or, you know, you're a hit person for the cartels. I mean, it's messed up.
Thank you. All right, we have two more lined up there.
Hi, my name is Valeska. I just have a question, because I recently went to El Paso in July for a wedding. And for the bachelor party, we decided, well, my friends decided to buy the liquor in Juarez because it was cheaper. But I was prohibited to go because I was a woman, and I was told about the stories and all this, and I was scared. So I just wanted to ask you, since you've been to Juarez, and you're obviously a woman, and you obviously stood out, did you feel like dangerous? Just a little bit. Just a bit. Just a touch. Did you feel like danger? I mean, did you have walking around with you like security all over? I mean, what was your experience being there?
Oh, wow. Right. Well, I didn't look like this, okay? And I dress very simply, but I do that whenever I go anywhere, because I try to, number one, respect the culture, and I'm not looking to make any overt statements. So I, you know, may walk around in tennis shoes and a long dress down to my ankles or whatever, very loose-fitting dress, and usually tie my hair back and no makeup, and then I just kind of go out and do my thing. And I talk with a lot of people, and some people drove me places, and I walked places, and there was a variety of different experiences. And I wouldn't say that I stood out all that much. I had a newspaper reporter that was going to pick me up and take me to a couple of places, and she was just like giving me this whole thing about, we hadn't met yet, and she said, you know, I don't know if this is going to work, and, you know, we need to kind of, she was really worried, you know, but she was brave. She decided to do it anyway, you know, to pick up this crazy woman that's decided to come down to Juarez, right? And so when she met me, she became relieved. She goes, oh my God, thank goodness. She goes, I wasn't sure what to expect, but, you know, I think we'll be okay. It was like, okay, good. So I've spent years in Egypt, and I've traveled to the Sinai, and I've been up through Jordan, and, you know, I've spent time with Bedouins, you know, camping in the desert, and riding camel, and so I mean, I wasn't, and who knew that you know, my neighbors were experiencing, you know, my Mexican neighbors were experiencing even more violence than what I was experiencing, you know, living in the Middle East. So my feeling is, and you know, we were actually followed by a cartel member one day when they were trying to take me to some place, and this other guy was, you know, the reporter. This man was so giving and spent a lot of time with me, and we were talking a lot and went here, there, and everything. But the bottom line was, you know, we were in an area that a cartel member knew that we were there, and he was standing right outside of his car, and he was waiting for us when we came back, and the reporter got in the car immediately. And so and he was continuing to talk to me, and he said, you just stand here and you just talk to me, and we're going to be okay, and I'm going to get you out of this. And I said, okay, and I believed him. You know, I believed him.
Thank you.
All right, la última. It's infectious.
Hello, my name is Lorena, and I have a short story. I just came back from Morelia, Michoacan, which is dominated by La Familia, which you pointed out. And when the lady on the YouTube video said it's normal, it is normal. Like out there, you just have people die all the time. And when I would ask people that lived out there, I would ask them, you know, what happened? They would be like, oh, they just killed so-and-so. He used to rob people, so it's okay. And they created this Robin Hood image of the cartels. Like, they're just killing bad people. Don't even worry about it. But then they weren't. Like, you would find out that they were killing people who were trying to make a living. And I don't understand how we get to live in a society where we don't have to deal with that, yet there are so many countries that go through it day in and day out. I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, it sure doesn't seem fair, does it?
Thank you. All right, I'm probably a little less than 5 minutes, I'm guessing here. All right, I'd like to, if we could get a round of applause for our guest today. And in my last couple of minutes, there are many, many people to thank here. And it's important that we get that out. I want to say thank you for, you know, the show. I mean, it was just such a wonderful idea that we did this. And this idea is to address the topic and then kind of move forward on it, not just to have a particular show and get that warm kind of fuzzy feeling as we leave if we don't do something more about it. So I'm really thrilled that we had the opportunity to talk about it. We have a couple of great guests that are lined up, going to be coming out in November. One, Gilbert Achcar, who's going to speak live from London to us about the Arab Spring and the revolutions all over the world. And he's a real hot shot speaker who's going to do that. I've also been speaking to Nev Gordon from Israel, and so I will let people know about that. We're also starting a global studies club that's really taken off, and I've had colleagues of mine say, they've never seen so much tenacity from these students, the drive that they have, and so we're always looking for other people to join the global studies. And one of the things we'll hit people up as I began today, talking about donations. It's very hard to do this by yourself. When you set up the shows and you're running around, Bernice Watson in the back is somebody who does all the technological things to make this happen, and a lot of times people don't get to see her, so if we can get a round of applause for Bernice. I'm very appreciative of all the students that have come today and, you know, my colleagues and all the people that support global education. I kind of see this grassroots movement kind of creeping up there. It's percolating. We need this to happen. If you want shows like this, if you want people around the world sharing their stories, then we have to demand and we have to kind of ask, you know, for things like that. I'd also like to say thank you to my sister who's in the very back. I haven't seen her in a long time out there, so you could raise your hand.
Hey, sister.
So we have to guess it. And I believe my mother in North Carolina is watching this on TV, so I'll say hi to my mom, even though she won't be able to respond. And she always tells me she watches this stuff. I doubt it, but anyway, it's just one of those things. But again, I want to thank everybody. I'm sure that I've forgotten somebody here that has, you know, been here for this. But I appreciate everybody, the colleagues, the students, the global studies, you know, everybody, People's Association, People's History Association, everybody coming to make this happen. And I thank you very much. We have how many minutes? We have a couple minutes here? Okay. Well, we got all those in here, and Bernice says, if we don't have any questions, then I have to dance or tell jokes. So if anybody here in the last couple minutes, any comments, any stories, anything that we could share in the last couple minutes before we're done here? Yes.
I have to say that education is the key, and education is one of the keys in the border. We should think about in America, we need to be educated, the immigrants and the people who's coming from anywhere, to be able to be more successful as a society. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it. Because this is like a epidemic that we talk. It's been growing every single year, and not only that, it's affecting us as a society as well.
Okay, excellent. Claudia was basically talking about the need for education, that we have a problem all over the world, and education is really the key. I'm trying to rephrase it because you weren't on the microphone, and just want to make sure other people can hear it. Any other closing comments today? Things that, please.
What organizations are in line already or
Would you do me a favor, and I'm sorry, could you just speak into the microphone so we can hear you? People are watching this on TV, so they won't be able to hear you if you don't speak into that.
Okay, my name is Veronica, and I'm wondering, because I've heard this for a while as well. I used to attend Cal State Long Beach, and they also addressed that issue in regards to Juarez. And I'm wondering, since it's still live, is there any organizations or someone, since of course it's intimidating, since it looks like this cartels are pretty huge, who has the power then, or who is going to be able to help out or to provide to actually make this better or improve the situation?
There are quite a few organizations in Juarez and all throughout Mexico. BASTA is a multi-tiered civil society. There's a lot of artists that are getting together, and you saw some of the artwork. They are bringing hope back into the city in terms of finding a voice. There's quite a list of them actually, and there's a website that actually talks about it. I don't have it with me, but I can certainly follow up with you and give you a list of some organizations. See, over here, not so much. You know, and that's where I think we need to have some work, because I think we can do so much more than what we're doing. But if you're convinced that, you know, building walls and keeping people out is the only way to address the situation, right? The front, right? That woman that was saying, we're the first front and keeping out, you know, the elements. Well, we are the element that they're trying to keep out, you know. So that is where I see that a lot can be done here, putting together societies where we can build bridges.
If we stop doing drugs, we solve the problem.
Yeah, or at least, you know, I mean, you know, the sad part is that drug use, gun running, all of that is not going to go away, but I think that we can redefine the rules, okay, you know. Yes.
And how are you forming part of this in order to better the situation?
Right. And because when I came back, it was the same thing. It was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do something. What can I do? And so we've developed a U.S.-Mexico Border Dialogue Coalition. And we just had our first conference, and we bring, and our conference was on violence and conflict against women and children on both sides of the border. So we talked a lot about human trafficking in San Diego, Tijuana, which unfortunately is, you know, women. And then we also looked at, you know, various groups in Juarez, Tijuana, et cetera. And we brought NGOs from Juarez in, we brought educators from Tijuana in, we brought other educators from El Paso, and we've started to set up a dialogue, and we've started to talk about what can we do, where do we go from here, what do we do next, because it is all about dialogue, to building relationships. This isn't something that you can do anything like, you know, just fix quickly. It requires commitment. It requires, you know, a part of you participating in the process. And so it was a great, you know, it was a great beginning. But it is about dialogue, and so that's where my heart is. It's about building, you know, relationships and saying. I'm also very interested in immigration reform. You know, I'm tired of the nonsense. You know, so that's probably where my heart will be also.
How can we get access to your email or access as well to the websites you said?
Yes, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll follow up with John, and I'll give you a list of things, and then he can send it out to you. That would be great.
Okay,
thanks.
Okay, we have probably just a little over a minute. Does anybody have a closing comment, something that they would like to say with the last minute here? Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, just that there is some hope. There's hope. I mean, it seems like an overwhelming topic, but there are people that have a heart to do something about it. Like, not just discuss, but go out there. And, I found that in my local church here in Norwalk, where we have a mission to go out to the nations. We've been to Honduras, Salvador, Juarez, TJ, and, you know, we donate clothing, food, and just give them a message of hope. You know, and I think it's a matter of the heart. Some people need healing. They have stuff that's like just dealing with seeing killing, seeing, you know, violence, you know. Another thing is people come and try to flee that violence and come here to try to make a living, you know. And they need help. I mean, we got immigrants here that are like, you know, trying to get a job, trying to, you know, and they need someone to reach out to them and walk them, you know, like, hey, like, point them in the right direction. A place to live, you know. And I've seen testimonies. I have like just a lot of stories that just it touches me, you know. So I just want to say there's hope. There's people with the heart. It's like, you know what? I'll go out to another nation. If there could be somebody that's, you know, that I could impact their life, you know. And like for example, like you were saying, you came from Colombia. We have, there's a lot of people in my church that come from different nations, you know, and we welcome them and we help them out, and we all like, we're united, you know. And I just want to extend that, you know, you're welcome to come. And we've heard a lot of testimonies of miracles of people getting, you know, immigration cleared and jobs.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're just done. We just finished up here, so thank you very much.